She pointed at the front door. My front door, the one I'd hung myself in 1986, the one with the brass knocker Margaret picked out at the flea market in Savannah, and she said, "You need to leave now, Ruth. This is a family dinner." I was holding a plate of Margaret's cranberry walnut stuffing. The recipe was in my handwriting on a yellow index card taped to the inside of the cabinet above the stove. I'd made it every Christmas for 41 years. The walnuts were still warm. My son was sitting at the head of my table, the table I'd refinished twice, the table where I taught him to write his name in 1989, and he didn't look up. He cut his turkey. He chewed. He swallowed. Like I was a draft coming through a window someone would get around to closing. "Michael," I said. He set his fork down. "Not quickly. Carefully. The way you handle something when you're trying not to break it but also trying not to hold it." "Mom," he said. "Maybe just tonight. Maybe just tonight." I put the stuffing on the counter. I folded the dish towel into quarters. I picked up my coat from the hook by the door. Third hook, the one that's lower because Margaret was 5 feet 2 inches and I'd mounted it at her height and never moved it. And I smiled. Not a brave smile. Not a broken smile. The other kind. The kind that comes from knowing something no one else in the room knows yet. Because Vanessa, my daughter-in-law, the woman who just told me to leave my own house on Christmas, didn't know about the folder in the filing cabinet downstairs. She didn't know about the 11 calls I'd recorded on the device, hidden inside Margaret's ceramic owl on the mantel. She didn't know about Paul Whitfield, my attorney, or what he'd filed on December 19th, 6 days ago, at the Mecklenburg County Courthouse. She didn't know that I'd spent 31 years as a forensic auditor for the North Carolina Department of Revenue, that I'd dismantled fraud operations worth tens of millions of dollars, that I'd sat across from people who thought they were the smartest person in the room and taken their confidence apart one receipt at a time. She thought I was a 71-year-old widow who baked too much and talked too softly and would shuffle out into the cold rather than cause a scene. She was right about the baking. But I need to go back. Let me tell you how a woman holding a plate of cranberry stuffing ended up smiling in her own doorway on Christmas night while her son wouldn't meet her eyes. My name is Ruth Adler. I've lived at 414 Chestnut Lane in Charlotte, North Carolina, since Ronald Reagan's first term. Bought the house with my husband Margaret's. No. I always do that. Margaret was my name for her. Her real name was Margaret, of course, but I called her that the way you call someone by a name that holds 44 years of everything inside 2 syllables. Her name was Margaret Adler. She died on February 11, 2023. Pancreatic. Stage 4 at diagnosis. 14 weeks from the first scan to the last breath. She died in our bedroom on a Tuesday at 4:17 in the morning. I was holding her left hand. The hospice nurse was holding her right. The nurse cried. I didn't. Not then. Later. For about 6 months, off and on, at unpredictable times. In the produce aisle at Harris Teeter at the post office, once during a Braves game on television, which Margaret would have found hilarious because she hated baseball and always said it was just men standing in grass looking worried. After she died, the house didn't shrink. It expanded. Rooms I used to share became rooms I passed through. The kitchen was the hardest. Every drawer had her fingerprints on the organization. Spoons here, whisks there, the good scissors in the blue cup by the toaster. Never the drawer, Ruth, that's where scissors go to die. I left it all exactly where she put it. My mornings had a shape. Coffee at 6:15, the Sumatra blend from the place on East Boulevard. 2 scoops, no sugar. The mug with a chipped handle that said, "World's Most Adequate Wife." A gag gift from Margaret's sister Deb in 2014. Then the crossword. Then watering the plants, the pot hose in the living room, the fern on the porch, the African violet in the bathroom window that Margaret had kept alive for 19 years through methods I still don't understand because I followed her instructions exactly and it looked annoyed with me at all times. Tuesdays I volunteered at the Mecklenburg County Library. Children's reading hour. 15 kids, give or take. I did the voices. Badly. The kids loved the badness. One boy, Jalen, 6 years old, always sat in the front row, once told me my bare voice sounded like a lawnmower with feelings. That might be the best review I've ever received. Thursdays I had lunch with my friend Doris Keller at the Golden Dragon on Independence Boulevard. We'd been going there since 2001. We always split the moo shu pork. Doris always said she'd try something new. Doris never tried something new. I was by any honest measure doing okay. Not great, bae. The grief was there, it's always there, it just changes shape like weather. But I had my routines and my people and my house and my health, and I was standing up each morning and finding a reason to stay standing. But that wasn't always who I was. For 31 years I worked for the North Carolina Department of Revenue, Fraud Investigation Division. I audited people, businesses, trust, faith. I followed money the way a bloodhound follows a scent. Not fast, not flashy, but with a persistence that outlasted every trick. I could read a bank statement the way a cardiologist reads an EKG. I could spot a forged signature from 4 feet away. I could sit in a room with someone who'd stolen $2 million and say nothing for 20 minutes and watch them fill the silence with their own confession. I was the person they sent when the case was complicated and the suspect was confident. I retired in 2019. Margaret asked me to. Not because she didn't respect the work. She did. She was proud of it. But she said, "Ruth, you've spent 3 decades looking for what's wrong with people. Spend the rest of it looking at what's right." She said it standing in the kitchen holding a wooden spoon and wearing the apron with the sunflowers, and I would have agreed to anything she asked while she looked like that. So I stopped. I put away that part of myself the way you put away winter clothes in April. Folded neatly, stored carefully, accessible if needed but not expected to be worn again. I kept that promise for 4 years. I would have kept it forever. Michael is my only child. Born 1988. Charlotte Memorial, 6 pounds 11 ounces. Arrived at 3:22 a.m. after 19 hours of labor, during which Margaret threatened to divorce me twice and proposed to the anesthesiologist once. He was a quiet baby. Careful child. The kind of boy who lined up his shoes by the door and checked the locks before bed. He got that from me. He moved to Raleigh after college. Marketing. Did well. Not spectacularly but well. He called every Sunday. He came home for holidays. He was a good son in the way that good sons are. Present, reliable, slightly awkward with physical affection, generous with his time when reminded. He married Vanessa Cole in 2019. October wedding. Vanessa planned it. The flowers were beautiful. The music was loud. Margaret wore the blue dress with the pearl buttons and danced with Michael, and I took a photo on my phone that I still look at every Sunday morning. Vanessa was, and I need to be careful here because I want to be fair, because fairness is the only currency that holds its value. Vanessa was impressive. She had a master's degree in organizational psychology. She worked in corporate consulting. She spoke with the confidence of someone who had read every book in the room and was waiting for everyone else to catch up. She was attentive to Margaret. She remembered Margaret's birthday. She asked about Margaret's garden. She sent Margaret a card after every chemo appointment. Not the generic Hallmark kind, the handwritten kind with specific references to specific conversations. She was good at making you feel seen. Extraordinarily good. After Margaret died, Vanessa called me 3 times in the first week. Real calls. Not obligation calls. She asked how I was sleeping. She asked if I'd eaten. She asked if I wanted her to drive down from Raleigh to help with the arrangements. "You don't have to do that," I said. "I know I don't have to, Ruth. I want to." She came. She stayed for 4 days. She organized the flowers. She answered the phone when I couldn't. She stood next to me at the funeral and handed me tissues without looking at me, which was exactly right, because the looking would have broken me, and she knew that. I loved her for that. I told myself, this woman is a gift. Michael found someone who understands how to be present for other people's pain without making it about herself. I told myself that for 14 months. The shift was so gradual that naming the exact moment it began is like naming the exact moment the tide turns. Can't. You just realize at some point that the water is in a different place than it was before. It started with the visits. After Margaret died, Michael and Vanessa started coming down from Raleigh more often. Once a month at first. Then every other weekend. Then Vanessa started coming alone. "Michael's swamped at work," she'd say. "But I didn't want you to be alone." She started staying overnight. Then whole weekends, She moved a few things into the guest room. A bathrobe, some toiletries, a phone charger. Small things. Reasonable things. She started reorganizing. Not dramatically. Kitchen drawer here. A linen closet there. Just making it easier for you, Ruth. Everything's so spread out. She moved Margaret's spice rack. The wooden one. The one Margaret built from a kit in 2007 and sanded herself and organized alphabetically. Allspice to turmeric, every jar labeled in her handwriting. It was blocking the outlet, Vanessa said. It wasn't blocking the outlet. I'd used that outlet for 37 years without moving the rack. But I didn't say that. 'Cause she was helping. 'Cause she was here. Because the house was too quiet and she made it louder, and I confused that with companionship. Then the suggestions started. Ruth, have you thought about simplifying your finances? You've got, 4 accounts? 2 investment portfolios. That's a lot to manage alone. I managed them fine for 31 years, Vanessa. Of course you did. I just mean now. With everything. She gestured vaguely. Everything meant Margaret being dead. I'll think about it, I said. Let me know if you want me to take a look. I'm good with numbers. I almost laughed. I swallowed it. I was good with numbers too. But she didn't know that. Because I'd never told her. Because I'd promised Margaret I'd put it away. Because nobody wants to hear their mother-in-law used to investigate fraud for the state government. It shifts the temperature of every conversation going forward. The first red flag was the mail. I came downstairs one morning. It was a Wednesday, April 19, 2024. I remember because it was the day after tax day and old habits die hard. And found Vanessa at the kitchen table with my mail sorted into piles. Pin. What are you doing? Sorting. You had a lot piling up. 3 of the envelopes were from Fidelity. 2 were from Wells Fargo. 1 was from the Mecklenburg County Tax Assessor's office. All opened. Vanessa, those are private. Ruth. She looked at me. The look. I'd seen that look across 100 audit tables. The concerned head tilt. The softened eyes. The almost invisible recalibration of strategy. I'm not reading them. I'm just helping you stay organized. Michael and I both worry. Michael didn't mention being worried. He doesn't want to upset you. But he is. We both are. I gathered the mail. I went upstairs. I put it in the filing cabinet in my office, Margaret's old sewing room, and locked the cabinet. That night I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling fan making its slow rotation, and something stirred. Not an emotion. Sense. The same sense I used to get in the first 5 minutes of sitting across from someone whose numbers didn't add up. A tightness at the base of my skull. A sharpening of the peripheral vision. Pushed it down. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself this was grief making me suspicious of kindness. But I didn't unlock the filing cabinet. The second flag was the phone call. June 8th. 10:40 p.m. I was in bed reading a Louise Penny mystery, the one set in Three Pines, Margaret's favorite series, and I heard Vanessa's voice through the guest room wall. Not the words. Tone. Low. Controlled. The way you talk when you're negotiating, not conversing. I heard 2 words clearly. Title and timeline. In the morning I asked who she'd been talking to. My sister. She's selling her condo. Vanessa's sister Sarah lived in a rental apartment in Asheville. She didn't own a condo. I knew this because Sarah had mentioned it at Thanksgiving 2023. Rent is theft but mortgages are prison. One of those statements people make when they're trying to sound philosophical about being broke. I didn't say anything. Filed it. The third flag was Michael. He stopped calling on Sundays. The calls moved to Wednesdays. Then they became texts. Then the texts became responses to my texts. Then the responses got shorter. Everything okay? I texted on July 14th. All good, Mom. V says she was there last weekend. Glad you two are spending time. Called him. Michael, I need to talk to you about something. Can it wait, Mom? I'm in the middle of. It's about the house. Silence. 4 seconds. Counted. What about the house? Has Vanessa mentioned anything about the house to you? About the title. 6 seconds. Mom, Vanessa handles all that stuff. She's good at it. Just let her help. Okay. She's trying to help. He hung up 90 seconds later. The conversation felt rehearsed. Not by him, he's not a good enough actor. By someone who'd briefed him on what to say if I asked. That night I sat at Margaret's desk. The roll top, the one with the ink stain from 1998 when she knocked over a bottle of India ink and said a word I'd never heard her say before or after. And I made a decision. I opened the filing cabinet. I took out every financial document I could find. And I did what I'd done professionally for 3 decades. I audited my own life. The process took 11 days. I worked between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. after Vanessa's breathing settled into sleep rhythm through the guest room wall. I used Margaret's desk lamp, the green banker's lamp, the one with the pull chain, with a towel stuffed under the door to block the light. Day 1. I requested duplicate statements from Fidelity, Wells Fargo, and my credit union. I used the library computer on Tuesday to access my accounts online, not the home computer because I didn't know what Vanessa had installed or accessed. Day 3. The statements arrived at the library. I changed the mailing address temporarily. Doris Keller asked why I was getting mail at the Golden Dragon's address. I told her I'd explain later. She ordered the moo shu pork and didn't push. Day 5 I found it. The first account, my primary checking at Wells Fargo, showed 23 transactions I hadn't authorized. Small amounts. $1,800 here. $2,400 there. $3,700. $4,200. Nothing over $5,000. The pattern was textbook. I'd written a training manual on this exact technique in 2011, staying under the currency transaction report threshold. Someone had studied the rules. Or been taught by someone who had. The second account, Fidelity Rollover IRA, had been partially liquidated. 3 withdrawals totaling $87,400. The authorization forms bore my signature. I pulled up the scanned images on the library computer and enlarged them to 400%. My capital R starts with a slight leftward curve at the top. It's involuntary, a motor habit from decades of cursive. The R on the authorization forms was straight. Perfectly straight. The kind of straight that comes from careful copying rather than natural writing. I printed the images. I put them in a manila folder. I labeled the folder Garden Notes and put it in the filing cabinet behind Margaret's seed catalogs. Day 7. I found the title inquiry. Someone had requested an informational copy of the deed to 414 Chestnut Lane from the Register of Deeds on May 3, 2024. The request was made online. The email address associated with the request was the same email address Vanessa used for her business. She hadn't even bothered to create a separate one. Day 9. I found the LLC. Chestnut Heritage Properties LLC. Incorporated April 28, 2024, with the North Carolina Secretary of State. Registered agent, Vanessa Cole Mumford. The articles of incorporation listed a purpose of acquisition and management of residential real estate properties. She'd created a company to receive my house. Day 11. I found the power of attorney. Durable. General. Naming Vanessa Cole Mumford as my attorney-in-fact with authority to manage all financial, legal, and real property matters on my behalf. Dated March 15, 2024. Bearing my signature, the wrong R, and notarized by someone named Heather Fisk at a UPS store in Raleigh. I had never been to a UPS store in Raleigh. I had never met Heather Fisk. I had never signed a power of attorney naming Vanessa or anyone else. I put the document down. I aligned its edges with the desk. I walked to the kitchen. I poured a glass of water from the tap and drank it standing at the sink looking at Margaret's garden through the window. The roses were leggy and needed cutting back. She would have done it in October. I always forgot until December. My hands were trembling. Fine tremor. The kind you can only see if you hold your fingers out straight and look at the spaces between them. I washed the glass. Dried it. Put it in the cabinet. Closed the cabinet quietly. I sat down at Margaret's desk and opened my phone and wrote 3 words on a notepad. Total confirmed. $143,600 forged documents. 7. Target. House, accounts, everything. Then I closed the notepad. I turned off the lamp. I sat in the dark for a long time. Margaret, I whispered. She's taking everything you left me. The house was quiet. The refrigerator cycled. The baseboard ticked. The particular silence of a room where someone used to breathe filled every corner. I'm going to stop her. But I have to break my promise to do it. Nothing answered. But the African violet in the bathroom was still alive, against all odds, and I chose to take that as permission. I didn't confront Vanessa. Not yet. I needed more. And I needed it preserved in a form that would hold up. I bought a recording device online. Voice activated. I put it inside Margaret's ceramic owl on the mantel. The one from our trip to Santa Fe in 2009. The one with the slightly crooked left eye that Margaret said gave it character. The owl sat between a photo of Michael's high school graduation and a candle we never lit. Nobody ever touched it. Nobody ever would. Over the next 6 weeks the owl heard everything. It heard Vanessa on the phone with someone named Derek, not a sister, not a colleague, discussing the timeline and the assessment. It heard her say, "She's 71. All I need is one doctor to sign off and we can petition." It heard her say, "The house is worth $440,000 minimum, with the land closer to 5. It heard her laugh after hanging up with Michael and mutter, "He'll do whatever I tell him. He always does." It heard her on August 14th at 9:23 p.m. tell Derek, "By January she'll be in a home and the transfer will be done. She won't even fight it. She doesn't have anyone." I played that recording 3 times. Not because I didn't understand. Because I needed the words to stop meaning what they meant. Chido.